No problem. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining this official UNFCCC side event organized by the Italian Climate Network in partnership with the United Kingdom Youth Climate Coalition and Greener Impact International, as well with other speakers from all around the world, including two speakers and guests we have here today with us at the extreme right and extreme left of this table, and another friend who will join us later remotely through the COP26 platform. Today's side event, as you might know, as you are here, and thank you again for attending our session, is called Youth Voices for Climate Justice, Climactivists from the World Rewriting COP26 Agenda. Quite an ambitious title for a side event in the afternoon, I admit, but that is exactly what we thought together with Serena and Gawusu when organizing this side event all over the months and coming to COP26. I will use my 5 minutes to introduce myself and to introduce the rules of the game for today. As you have seen from the description of the event and the ads that we published online as well through our networks, today is going to be a very, very interactive session, and we would like to hear your voice as well. We would like to hear we would like you to have a say actually in this event, but before that, once again, let me introduce myself and my colleagues. I'm Jacopo Bencini, Policy Advisor and UNFCCC contact point of the Italian Climate Network. We are an Italy-based NGO covering with reporting everything that happens inside negotiations since 2011. Together with me, Serena Mashal from the UKYCC, Gawusu Kassim from Greener Impact International. We will have Hajar Khamlichi together with us, the president of the Mediterranean Youth Climate Network, and Orimoloye Ayola Olufemi, a climate activist from Nigeria with a very, very long curriculum of activism and actions, and Carla Meleno from the Youth in Landscape initiative. So we will start with some key points. We have a title today which is about climate justice, and that's indeed one of the topics we would like to cover. This COP26 has been extremely challenging already, well ahead the first day of the conference for many of us, especially for young people coming from developing countries from the south of the world, I would say. In terms of logistics, in terms of costs, but also in terms of actual representation inside the process. And nobody else would know better what climate justice means that the people actually living in places where the negative and adverse impacts of climate change are already happening. So we decided, as Italian Climate Network and together with our partner organizations, to devote this 1 hour and 15 minutes time that we got assigned by the UNFCCC to actually help these organizations and help representatives from the South to have a say inside here. We have subtopics for today, of course, and I'm glad to know that our speakers actually prepared some key points for the beginning of the conversation on those topics, which are climate justice, but also youth participation and ambition, which is quite central and essential in this COP26 meeting. And we know how important it will be to have some sort of result from the negotiating process in terms of NDC timeframes, in terms of a long-term goal, in terms of transparency, and so on. But I think I'm already at the end of my initial 5 minutes, and I would leave the floor to my friend Gawusu Kassim for, well, Gawusu, you will tell us.
Thank you very much, Jacopo, and it's a pleasure to be here. First of all, let me say that maybe just by few words to introduce myself. My name is Kassim Gawusu from Ghana, working with Greener Impact International, which is a youth-led NGO, working with local communities and youth to promote their awareness and also to ensure that they are part of the action to address climate change. So basically by means of introduction. But besides my work at Greener Impact International, I'm also with the African Youth Initiative on Climate Change, which is more or less the largest youth network on the continent, working with young people just to mobilize African youth front so that they are actively engaged in the international climate change process, and also actions on how to accelerate the ambition, how to accelerate action towards achieving the ambitions of the Paris Agreement. Thank you. Maybe just some few words from me.
Thank you very much, Gawusu, and I would proceed with our friend and colleague Serena Mashal from the UKYCC for some starting points, and then we can continue later.
Sure. So my name is Serena. I am 23 years old. I'm from the UK, from London. And I've been volunteering with the UK Youth Climate Coalition for 5 years now. I have some members of our amazing delegation over here in the audience. Love these guys. And yeah, so my first time at the UN was at COP22 when I was 18 years old. And I still volunteer with UKYCC today, all this time. So I was also the UK Youth Delegate to the pre-COP summit in Milan. And I also have just organized the 16th UN Climate Change Conference of Youth. This is the official COP26 Youth Conference, and a bunch of other stuff as well. So I guess, yeah, I wanted to touch upon some points before we go into a bit more of an interactive discussion. And in my activism, one of my biggest challenges that I do face is kind of dealing with the whole climate justice aspect and fighting for climate justice. So as someone from the UK, I kind of feel personally responsible for this whole issue. And just coming from a country that has contributed so much to climate change, I mean, we've caused so much suffering and the demise of these countries from all over the world and these areas and these communities. And it's our fault. And emotionally, this is actually really, really quite difficult to live with. And it actually genuinely breaks my heart. And especially now, and then because I am in the process, I'm involved and I'm at the UN, and I'm seeing these young people with my own eyes really facing these barriers and struggling and not being able to participate in the process and in the decision-making process. Yeah, it's heartbreaking, actually. And to just touch upon an example. So, as I just said, I was one of the organizers for the 16th UN Climate Change Conference of Youth, or COY16 for short. And one of our huge challenges was Global South participation, Global South and indigenous communities, and anyone, most affected people in areas, their participation in our conference. It was I think mostly because of the pandemic, but it would have been difficult anyway. Getting them actually here, because the whole point of our conference is to gather the young people and collect all of their inputs to then feed into the COP26 process. But if we can't actually get them here, we can't then gather their voices and feed this in. And it was issues with vaccine, with the UK maybe not recognizing their vaccine from the other countries, or getting their visa. This was a huge, huge issue, and we had to lobby the government, the UK government, and work so closely with them. And it was so intense, and it was emotionally so challenging. There was one call with the UK government where I literally just broke down sobbing because they were just saying there's nothing we can do, and it was very hard. And it was like it was a physical embodiment of right there with my own eyes, just seeing climate injustice, and it hurts. It really does hurt. So yeah, I guess I can see I'm kind of running out of time. I kind of wanted to talk a bit more about the importance of youth participation in process.
Go ahead, Serena. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to nutshell it. Let's nutshell it. So we all know here, I know it's kind of preaching to the choir. Youth participation is absolutely essential. At the end of the day, it's quite literally our futures being negotiated here over the last few days, over the next few days, and over the next week. We need to make sure our voices are involved. How does it make sense to have negotiations and to have a process where they're deciding on the future and the lives of the people, which is us, but then we're not there and our voices are not accounted for? It just doesn't make sense, kind of ridiculous actually. So we need to ensure that intergenerational equity is included in all decision-making processes, I guess, UN, national, local, any really. We need to ensure that the Earth's resources are utilized in a sustainable manner for all future generations to be able to not only to survive, but also to thrive. And now, us in this room, who are the young people, we are the next generation of leaders. And the Earth is currently at tipping point, and we now have a duty to the planet now to do absolutely everything we can to champion climate action. I'm going to say one more thing. So another reason why it's important, last thing now, to include our perspectives, aside from it being our future at stake, is that climate change impacts are quite uncertain and you can't always predict what's going to happen. Thus, we as a society need to ensure that we are always one step ahead of this continuously evolving thing that's happening, climate change, this continuously evolving global change. But then us as young people, we can bring so many fresh ideas and new energies and provide innovative, novel solutions that maybe the old people didn't think of already, but we can bring this, right? And yeah, young people are innovators by nature. We are creative. We have so much to bring to the table. And this is why I love working in the youth climate space so, so much, is that you just get to see so many amazing ideas and processes, all for the common goal of climate action. I could talk about this for so much longer, but I'm going to stop there.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Serena, for these starting bullet points were, well, actually much more than bullet points, and to kickstart our discussion. And I would like to give the floor now to a friend which is connected from quite far away, actually, as she will arrive at COP26 in a few days. And I'm speaking of Hajar Khamlichi. I think she's in. Here we are.
Thank you all. Thank you for inviting me, dear Italian Climate Network, our founding and one of the most active members of the Mediterranean Youth Climate Network. I'm really thrilled and happy to be among you, even in distance. And we'll be much happier to join you in few coming days. Well, as we know, all this COP sets the course for the decisive decade when we either keep 1.5 degree within the reach or to condemn the planet and humanity to climate chaos. World leaders in Glasgow face a clear task. They must agree on a comprehensive package of outcomes that will set us on an accelerated pathway toward closing the gap to the Paris Agreement goals. And globally, we have entered the era of the loss and damage. And Glasgow must deliver solidarity and ambition. This COP26 must take urgent and needs-based action on loss and damage, and that UNFCCC supports the most vulnerable people, communities, and ecosystems to address unavoidable climate change impacts. Calls from developed countries to come forward with a new additional climate finance to support the loss and damage in the least developed countries, and also to develop to hold developed countries with more accountability for the quality and quantity of climate finance they are providing. Therefore, this COP26 must advance how they will scale up and level up the access to climate finance for adaptation and the new additional finance to address loss and damage to timely disbursement to climate finance. So countries should agree and start the process to develop the new post-2025 long-term climate finance and goal to be truly responsive to the needs of developing countries. This needs to be science-based and depending on the length of the time frame envisioned for reaching that goals, set clear milestones and intermediate targets for increasing the quality of climate finance well beyond $100 per year. This is the only way that we can get this climate action really into move, and we can provide the help and the right support to developing countries from the south. Otherwise, also, Countries must close the mitigation gap to 1.5 degrees by 2030. This decade is decisive. And COP26 has to agree how that is going to be done. All countries, and especially the G20, must submit NDCs with stronger 2013 targets aligned with 1.5, even if this is what we heard and what we testified the last weeks was interesting, but not that really credible as we wish it to. So to put emissions on 1.5 trajectory by the end of the decade, parties should agree at this COP to enhance their NDCs, the 2013 NDCs, and to be really aligned with the 1.5 degree. They need to plan and accelerate the implementation of already agreed climate plans and policies, including consultations and engagements of civil society and youth. Climate ambition commitments needs to be followed up with a genuine climate action and accelerated implementation at the domestic level. So this really needs to be ensured with the mobilization and the involvement of the youth and all the stakeholders and the parts of the communities that are the most vulnerable. So the countries that have not yet done so should submit their long-term strategies too for achieving a real zero by 2015 and commit to their 2013 targets as soon as possible without the false solutions, including any support for continued fossil fuel industries such as gray hydrogen or maybe blue one. So parties must deliver strong rules for ambition, strengthening the implementation and ambition of the Paris Agreement, not undermining it. And this decision could come first with a wide range of stakeholders that needs to be able to meaningfully participate and input contribution to the ground. For this purpose, technical and financial supports must be organized and provided to developing countries, parties, as well as non-state actors, such as civil society, youth organizations, or indigenous people. And it is really vital that guiding questions are based on the following principles. One, which is limiting the global warming to 1.5 degrees, enabling and facilitating the input of indigenous people, knowledge, and local community practices that are sometimes transmitted in informal ways, centering of human rights, and including all pillars of Paris Agreement with dedicated sections on loss and damage. That is currently missing. Assessing polluting practices and contribute to climate change, and namely the use of fossil fuel. And finally, a new work program for action for climate empowerment must ensure better mainstreaming of the as across relevant work streams through human rights-based approaches, a coherent and incremental 5-year plans, and an ambitious roadmap. An expert group or task force would gather parties and non-party stakeholders that are already conducting work outside of the UNFCCC that is relevant to the us. And of the Green Climate Funds, the Global Environment Facilities, and Adaptation Fund that should be included within these workshops and meetings to ensure the integration of the us in the NDCs on the national reports. Thank you so much for your attention. That was the main really direct messages that we would like to pass to this new COP26 or climate action agenda for the decision makers. Thank you, Jacopo. I give you the floor back.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hajar, for connecting and being with us today, despite not being yet in COP26. And that's definitely what we mean with youth participation and actually resetting the agenda. Actually, this year has been a very important year for youth participation, at least on paper, as we had two huge events. The first one in Milan, a month ago. As you all know, the Italian government, in partnership with the UK government, organized Youth for Climate, and for the first time, a government actually invited delegates from all countries, which is something similar to the process that we all already know, which is the Conference of Youth process, which is, on the other hand, completely bottom-up and self-funded. So the Youth for Climate manifesto, and I think that many of you have read that on the internet, contains some quite strong sentences. And I remember when it was first presented in front of environment and climate ministers in Milan. We were there as ICN, and I remember the shock it caused, because, you know, governments organizing a conference for young people, and young people basically ask governments to phase out from coal by 2030, which is something, you know, grown-ups would basically say that is impossible to reach at the moment. But think how impactful youth participation could be in resetting the agenda from scratch in this kind of context. And we had ministers actually engage in the conversation with the young people. And then we had recently, a few days ago, a conference of Youth 16 here in Glasgow, with inputs coming from all over the world and all the local COIs which happened. And I would like to give the floor to the two guests we have with us today from Nigeria and Peru. And I would start with Orimoloye Ayola Olufemi, who actually attended and participated and contributed to COP26.
Yes.
So, Orimoloye, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. My name is Ayola from Nigeria. I'm a graduate student from the University of Bedfordshire in the UK. And I'm 25, I'll be 25 tomorrow, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. I'll start by saying we make more impact when we provide solutions and give alternatives than just making demands. And like we all know, climate change is one of the pressing issues facing humanity. You know, it has been there for the past 40 years. And we must note that the replenishing capacity of the Earth is diminishing because of greenhouse gas emission due to overexploitation of natural resources and biodiversity. The Earth is now, you know, giving back, is telling you that it's not interested in taking more waste again. And we must also note that climate change is a global phenomenon. So it's not a problem for the developing country or the developed country. It's a global phenomenon. Either to it has both local, national, and regional effects. For example, in the global north, for example, you can find it's having effect in cyclones, heat waves, and natural disaster, which you might not see common in the developing countries. But that is effect in hunger, loss of lives, and displacement of properties. And that being said, that we know the problem about climate change, we know the effects and the impacts. We must foster forward to what is next, which is target. And the main target is to reduce average temperature to 1.5 degrees by 2030. That's the major target, although there are many sub-targets, but that's the major target. And this will mean a revolution in our use and exploitation of natural resources. Having known the target, we move over to the solutions, which is to bring in new ideas and new ways of, you know, creating a sustainable future. And I would like to make mention of just two key points here, which is courage and knowledge. I was privileged to hand over the Global Youth Statement alongside other young leaders. And one thing the General Assembly President said was hope. He used hope as the main mantra for his presidency. And I would like to also add in addition that more than hope, we need courage. Courage to, you know, to free ourselves from destructive habits and create a new path for a sustainable future. Courage to challenge the status quo, challenge the developed nations on how they explore natural resources from developing nations, and don't want to also give back as a form of climate justice. Next one is knowledge. What you can see so far is the impact of the knowledge base of the current generation. They are stuck and they can't move us forward. That's why the youth have to come on board to create a new future for ourselves. Now, there's a huge knowledge gap on how to transition from conventional practices to sustainable practices. We can't longer deal on fossil fuel again. We can't longer cut down trees again. We have to create a new future, but we don't have the knowledge base now. That's where I charge youth to focus more on knowledge acquisition other than just climate strikes and protests. This will involve youth being involved in curricular education, especially in the formal settings, such as the nursery, primary, secondary, and tertiary. Learning new things, bringing new things into our education, such as business education, climate education, and political education. This will also mean that, for the indigenous people, which don't have access to formal education, let's bring in extracurricular activities such as town hall meetings, games, and seminars to educate them and enlighten them on the new ways and the revolution that's coming across. The youth have the opportunity and the chance to create a greener and cleaner future, and we must all have all hands on deck. Like I said earlier on, we need knowledge, and we've been clamoring to be part of the decision making, across, meetings and the seminars. But one thing I know is you can't be at the drawing table if you've got no knowledge. That's why I'll say we need more than passion. We need superior knowledge to be able to influence some of these decisions. I implore all you to go back to the learning table to learn new ways and new things. According to a UN World Youth Report in 2020, it is said that youth showed more entrepreneurial initiative than adults. But however, implementation always meets a huge setback. So what does this mean? Youth have got many ideas. I've spoken to different youth all across the conference from COP26, and you can only marvel at what youth have had in stock. But many of these things are just on a very small scale. That's also my next point, scaling. We need to begin to scale at global standard, because for you to fight climate change, which is a global phenomenon, you need to make global impact. So I implore you to begin to scale at both, not just local levels, but national and regional levels. And also there should be a transition in approach from just passion to business. For example, if you look at sustainability, which is people, planet, and profit, what you can find so far is the youth have just focused on people and planet without recognizing the effect of profit, which is the economy, on transition. So we should begin to look at transition in the aspect of not just people and planet, but also profit. And as I conclude, we must remember that the earth has given us the alternative for us to thrive and create a new future, such as the wind, solar energy. We need courage to forge ahead and create a new path. COP26 will be like any other conference if we go back as youth without making new resolutions and concrete decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ayola. I think it's okay to applaud. It's not okay to sing happy birthday before time, right? So in terms of setting the rules of the meeting, and I would like to end this first round of interventions before switching to the more interactive part with Carla Meleno from Peru, from the Youth in Landscape Initiative. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jacopo, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carla Meleno. I am Peruvian ecologist, and I have worked in the last years as keen youth advocate, starting from the manifold events and capacity building events organized by Global Landscapes Forum, which I dearly encourage you to always sign up for. And then in the last year and a half as steering member committee to the Youth in Landscapes Initiative. I actually prepared some points that I would like to share with the audience being present in this room around the need for raising climate ambition. As the previous speakers well highlighted, we are sitting in Glasgow these 2 weeks with the goal of accelerating the transition from dirty coal-based energies to clean power, and doing this transition in a Paris-aligned mode of keeping global warming no more than 1.5 degrees. However, we are also sitting in this room because youth, especially youth, have realized that our leaders sitting in the leadership positions or at the negotiating tables at the moment are not acting or fast or good enough in order to actually achieve this overarching goal. So what I want to highlight with this intervention is that it is up to our own nations that are currently funding dirty industries, still mining and drilling for oil and gas explorations, which is actually risking the goal of reaching 1.5 degrees global warming, limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees. Scientists and civil society have made this call very clear to keep coal, keep gas in the ground. However, there is a major gap as there are no explicit rapid fossil fuel reductions in the production system. And the current trend is that governments plan production of energy being up to 2 times higher than what it's supposed to be in order to be Paris aligned by 2030 and 2050. This according to the UN Production Gap Report 2021. This means that it is our own governments and our own leaders sitting at the decision tables which continue to not look away from mining and drilling for oil and gas projects, and this is the focus that we need to, let's say, put back at the center of the conversation, because I see a lot of fuss, a lot of noise around reaching net zero targets and so on. But what about the investments? What about the decisions? What about the actual extractive operations happening on the ground? And let's not be fooled by some oil companies or corporations that claim to be doing this transition into the green renewables field, when in fact these investments, green investments, only account for about 1% of their total capital expenditure. You cannot claim you're doing the change if only 1% of your total capital expenditure is being put in green energies. This is not a political statement. This is not an alarmism intervention. This is a repetition of facts we have heard from the media. We have heard even from Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General, from the United Nations. This is red code for humanity, and the question is how much of this are we still willing to accept and cover with speeches, cover with perhaps delays in the ambition. So what I want to also, perhaps going back to a more humane view of this crisis, of the climate crisis, is that it really requires a shift in our mind as a society, as youth representatives, as civil society representatives, from what true leadership is. Like, who are our leaders out there? Are they setting the benchmark for correct leadership in line with moralism, in line with climate justice, in line with intergenerational and racial justice? Or are we talking about leaders that are not even upholding that benchmark and leaving our expectations down? I come from a country that is wealthy in natural capital assets, wealthy in ancestral cultures and wisdom. If the Inca and pre-Inca cultures ring a bell in you, audience, then perhaps you would understand what I mean. And this view, this wisdom, Andean Amazon wisdom, has been enriched throughout centuries because these people, these indigenous people, these local communities, they have understood that life must be connected with the respect of nature, Mother Nature, and that power by the leaders should be at the service of the earth and of the poorest. So I want to perhaps ignite a bit of spark in the audience to rethink what true leadership is, and that we cannot afford wrong leaders sitting in the very important positions, because it's about critical tipping points. I am a biologist by education. I have science degrees and education, and my understanding of the vulnerability of our planet and the fragility of our planet is really shocking, and increases perhaps in me and in the audience and in other youth worldwide and in the panelists, this eco-anxiety feeling of knowing we are trespassing tipping points. The Amazon is being savanized. That that what used to be a carbon sink, it's now a carbon source, that our tundras and boreal forests are starting to release methane, that our beautiful polar caps are starting to melt down, that our own cities at the coast are being threatened by the sea level rise. Is that a future we envision? Is that a present we envision? Again, I come from Peru, I come from Latin America, where we have the Andean mountain range, we have tropical glaciers, and these are becoming extinct. So at least for my own nationality, it's already a present issue of climate already destroying let's say, the wealth and the natural capital of my own country. And these glaciers are disappearing. They're going back, I don't know how many meters per year, like 60 meters per year and so on. And many of them will be gone by the end of the decade. So all in all, I want all of us to become aware that, and perhaps join voices. This is not only youth, these are also inter-religious leaders. The Pope Francis called in his movement, Laudatio Si', for the respect of the common house, Dalai Lama as well, Nobel laureates as well in the so-called Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty that I invite you to review. Because we really need to phase out fossil fuel production and start investing in transformational plans to ensure global access to renewable energies. Finally, I want the audience to be aware that the climate crisis is just a twin crisis of a much bigger and much important neglected crisis, which is the biodiversity loss crisis. And I cannot remain seated and relaxed knowing that nowhere, or perhaps in very few spaces at the side events, biodiversity loss is even being a topic or not. So I want you to become those leaders that you are dreaming of, that respond to your demands, that respond to the needs of these humans' ecological and economic urgency. And that I invite bright minds sitting here, especially from the Global South, to make space and also to take space in the decision-making tables. And negotiators at COP, we are watching on you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carla. And before switching to the interactive part, I would like to hear a bit more from Gawusu, actually, because you were so, how can I say, you thought so much about your time constraints at the beginning that I would like to give the floor for an additional 2 minutes about your experience before.
Okay, thank you very much. I think when I picked the floor for the first time, it was just more of introducing myself, but I think there are quite a lot of issues that I would want to highlight, especially having listened to my sister right beside me, with regards to whether we really have leaders or not. And I would want to highlight some of the inconsistency that really exists between this process, climate change process, and what is really happening on the ground. And I could mention that in terms of actually mobilizing young people's voices, then it means that they have to actually be at the decision table. For me, I mean, coming from Africa, there are quite a lot of challenges that I've faced throughout my engagement in this process. And I think it's not just a story of, it's not just my story, but also so many young people are really facing these challenges. And that is the reason why we continue to really amplify our voices. And I would like to just highlight 3 of them. One of them is that most often when COP process is happening, we hardly have representation from the Global South, specifically Africa. And if you cast your eyes around in this room, you would realize that you would just be able to count 1 or 2 or up to 5 people, perhaps I would assume, are coming from Africa. And the challenge is that one, they have a challenge with regards to having access to accreditation to participate in events like this. And the second issue is with regards to funding, because even if they have accreditation, how they can mobilize resources to participate in events like this is really a challenge for them. And most often, because of this, their voices are left out in all these processes. So I think this is a serious challenge that we really need to look at. And it's not just the issue of African youth, but I think it's the issue of all of us here, because if we want to really address climate change, we really want to meet the ambition, the Paris ambition, then it has to be a collective kind of role. And I would like to link this with the processes that is happening here. We have what we call the Doha work program on Article 6, which actually is supposed to galvanize the support of everybody within the society to participate in climate action. But what is happening with the Doha work program, you see there are a lot of gaps in terms of even, there are ACE focal points who are supposed to actually be working on the ground with non-state actors like youth and all that. But these ACE focal points are limited because they are not provided with funding. So an institution has been established purposely to address the issue of engagement, but what is really happening on the ground is totally different because the ACE, as we see it, is not really functioning. I think that gaps with regards to funding the ACE focal point to really undertake their action is on the ground is very, very much important. The second thing, or another thing that I would want to highlight is with regards to mobilizing it. With time, I think we have really been able to have many more of our countries engaging young people at the national level and even at the continental level, because I know, as Serena mentioned earlier, there was local COI, which engaged young people, and I know quite a number of African youth had the opportunity to participate this time around. But then, beyond the mobilization, I think our priorities are really changing. It's not just the pictures, or it's not just the talking, because young people are looking for actions on the ground. And we are not just calling our leaders to take the action, but we really want to be part of those actions. So we have, like earlier on the panel, it was mentioned that young people have innovative ideas that can address climate change on the ground. And this is just the challenge. It's not just addressing the climate change. This also provides them with the opportunity to really employ themselves and also employ other young people. So I think that beyond the mobilization and beyond engagement, we really need funding to go to support initiatives of young people so that they are able to really undertake actions on the ground. When you look at the global climate change, climate finance architecture, they are not familiar, or they are not friendly for application for young people. When you look at the GCF and all the climate change funding that you have, the fiduciary requirements that one has to go through, I think it's not every young person whose organization is capable of meeting all these requirements. So I think that within the process, we have GCF. There should be an establishment of a funding mechanism that will really target or support young people's initiatives on the ground. Coming from Africa, sometimes I'm split between taking climate action or coming out as a full-blown activist, and also facing the reality on the ground in terms of the lack of jobs, in terms of the poverty level and all that. You realize that sometimes it becomes very difficult as an activist to really go out to advocate for climate change. For instance, many African countries have discovered oil, and many of them are hoping that this oil is going to really help their countries develop in terms of addressing the social and economic challenges those countries have. But unfortunately, we are at a time where countries are not supposed to really, they are supposed to keep the oil in the ground. But then how do they address those challenges that are on the ground? The youth unemployment, the social issues, the vulnerability issues. Every day you see in the news that young people from Africa are trying to cross over to other parts of the world for greener pastures. It's not just because they really want to travel or something. It's just the situation on the ground that is really pushing them out. So if we want to address climate change and we really want to make impact on the ground, I think young people have to be put at the center stage, not just engaging them at mobilization or awareness, but also supporting those initiatives that can help them to stay in their country and also support other young people on the ground. I think that's just what I want to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gawusu. Well-deserved applause. And now we will we will switch to the second part of this event, which, as you have understood, it's not the very typical panel event with people speaking, and other people listening in the room. We would like to divide the room in 3 parts. Unfortunately, we cannot move around the seats that much, so please keep your mask on and keep the distance, the safety distance between yourself, and we will have a 20-minute free conversation that we can all have, and we know that there's plenty of bright, smart activists and people here in the room today, and we would like to hear from you as well. So I would suggest the left part of the room, seen from my side, to chat a bit about climate ambition this year at COP26. Together with me, I will be helping. In case someone wants to intervene at the end, it would be extremely welcome to have a sort of rapporteur of this quick chat that we will have. Then the central part of the room, here right in front of me, will discuss youth participation, especially from the Global South, together with Serena. And the right part of the room, seen from my side, will discuss climate justice with our friend Gawusu, as just explained. I think we can have a wrap up at around 4 p.m. Here, local time. And as you can see, you have 4 mics in the room, number 1, number 2, number 3 right there, and number 4. And we will help you taking the floor and basically conquering this side event, as we promised that we will provide space for youth voices. So I think we have something like 15 minutes to briefly chat among ourselves. Of course, Carla and Orimoloye Ayola. Well, a round of applause for them as well, guys, because I would like to thank them again for being here together with us. Carla and Ayola you're free to join the conversation in the room, and see you at 4 p.m. Don't leave the room, eh? Let's have a chat together. Hi again, everybody. I think we have something like 1 minute left to interact with our guests and speakers on the floor, and then we will briefly wrap up. All right, 2 minutes are gone. I would kindly ask to take your seats again. Anarchy is beautiful, but sometimes wrapping up the session is as well. So please, I will ask Ayola and Carla Meleno to join me on stage again. Thank you, guys. Together with Gawusu and Serena, if you think you have a rapporteur for your area. You do? All right. All right, then thank you very much for these 15 minutes. I had myself the opportunity to interact with some of you. And I got a gift also. Okay. And I think we can start the wrapping up session. Please, attention in the room. Please. There's a game I used to play some time ago while working in an African country in a different context, and they told us to show our hands as the ones who were not listening to the speaker were not listening to that as well. Show me your hands, please. Show me your hands. Who's not listening is not showing the hands. All right, that works still, somehow. So from the Climate Ambition Group, I would like to hear from Elisa. You can reach mic number 1 here in the front. Where is Elisa? All right. Well, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Wow, this is a lot of light, very daunting. We were talking about climate ambition, and especially with today being the Finance Day at COP, we were talking about shifting funds. I guess it is evident that, transition to more sustainable energies need to happen no matter where we get the money from for doing that. But so far, Scotland has been the only country to actually pledge funds for loss and damage, something that especially indigenous peoples and activists from the global south have been demanding for decades. And we were asking, today's the Finance Day, we're talking about all these sustainable investments and all of that. Why are not more countries investing money into loss and damage funds? Because we want to save the planet, but we also need to, in a way, refurbish the planet. We need to do more than just saving what we have. We need to let the planet recover. We need to let our Earth recover. So we were talking about shifting money, and then there was a really smart comment from one of our speakers earlier about it's not only about us taking spaces in the activist scene, it's about us pushing open these doors and actually demanding a seat at the table. It's about us going into these rooms. From today onwards, the plenary sessions are open for observers, but during the high security summit where all the world leaders were here, we weren't allowed to access these spaces. And that is wrong, because it's our future. And there was such a limited ticket capacity for all of these things. And there were mainly old white people discussing the future of millions of young people around the globe. And that is wrong. So climate ambition needs to include that. It needs to include us being included in all of the conversations. It needs to include loss and damage reparations. It needs to include listening to young people, no matter how much experience they have, because in the end, it's our world. Thank you.
For the second group on youth participation, especially from the Global South, we have Serena, who volunteered to represent the group herself, right?
No, I am going to say, whoever from the middle section, let's go with 2 people, because I know we had lots of different groups going on. Whoever wants to take the mic, take it for 1 or 2 minutes, and we'll have 2 people. So someone can go for, yeah, go for it. Whoever wants to go first, someone go, and then whoever wants to go second, someone go. So yeah, let's just say front half, you guys choose one, back half, you guys choose someone.
Yeah, okay, go ahead. 2 minutes, please. Mic number 2.
Yes, perfect.
All right.
Thank you very much. So we were actually with a very small group because it was a little bit hard to talk together in such a big group. What we really talked about is that obviously at this COP it is difficult to have youth participation. I'm super proud to see so many young people in this room. You don't see that often in the many sessions that are going on this week. But what we talked about is kind of 3 things. So one, we need youths to protest, and I think that is going on outside of the sessions today, but also inside. I saw some activists today. The second one is we need youths to participate in international events like these to make sure that ambitions on the international level line up to the Paris agreements to make sure that we limit global warming up to 1.5 degrees. But we also, and I think that's a third one, and the one that I have experience with myself, is that we need youth to participate on the national level. So I am a member of the We Are Tomorrow Global Partnership, and we are a unique partnership from youth organizations from all over the world, a lot of partners in the Global South, including Bangladesh, Nigeria, Uganda, Chile, Mexico, I could go on. And what we do is we write vision documents stating very clearly and concretely what young people want from their governments by 2030, by 2040, by 2050. And we use these vision documents to then engage in concrete dialogues with our politicians and policymakers to make sure that these politicians know what young people want their country to look like in 2050. I think that's super important because these things are much more concrete. As young people, we can know very well what the laws and what the policies are in our own countries, and we need to make sure we have an influence on these as well. So that is what we kind of discussed in our group, but this is also an open invitation to all of the young people in this room. We'll be in the middle of the room after this session. If you're interested in the We Are Tomorrow Global Partnership and becoming part of this yourself, do look us up and we'll give you our contact information. We are a partnership of 12 countries now, which is, I think, very amazing. But to be a true global partnership, we need to expand and include more young people as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then one more person from the middle group. Whoever wants to take it, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, mic number 1.
Hi, yeah. First of all, you're going to have to forgive my English. Maybe it's come out a little bit of Spanglish, but you asked us to talk about the South Hemisphere, and well, I'm from Chile, a country of South America. And we were talking with our friend here about all the problems we have in that part of the world. And I think in events like this, it's important for us to communicate to you the problems we are having, because one day we were here at the event and some people of Japan approached to us because they wanted us to tell them how we were living the climate crisis in that part of the world. Because sometimes people, I'm not one to say all people, but sometimes people in the north pole of the world or maybe in the more development continents doesn't feel the crisis as we feel it, because maybe you have better structures or maybe you are not feeling it. In Chile, there is a really large country. We have from desert to Antarctic, so in that way, we have a lot of environmental problems, very different from each other. So first of all, I think it's really important for us to tell you that we are having a really, really rough time because we are really vulnerable and we have different issues. Also, we have in our country different industries like salmon fisheries and forestal industries that are from the North Hemisphere, and they are destroying our environments. So I think it's really important for us to say that we are really vulnerable, and we need you to be in the other parts of the world aware of what we are living and take action for us as we are taking action for ourselves. So yeah, I think that is what I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think we should proceed quite quickly as we have 5 minutes before leaving the room. Gawusu, I think you had 2 subgroups. Am I wrong?
Yes, so from the climate justice group, please, if you can have your rapporteur or someone leading your discussion to share with us. And also behind, I think you can also be getting ready, the second group behind.
It's quite rude to say, but please stick to 1 minute, like some bullet points, really, as we have to leave the room in 5 minutes. I will listen to you forever, but please go ahead.
That's no problem. So we were kind of talking about climate injustice. We're 2 young activists from Wales. I'm 17 and Shannon is 18. And what we were talking about is kind of how to understand how to act on how to act in a climate justice way, we need to actually understand what climate injustice is, because we think that sometimes in our group we discussed how climate change and things like poverty, lack of education, social deprivation, they're seen as completely different things when actually they're really interlinked. And so the only way to actually combat that is to understand what it is and by listening to people. And we kind of, in our group, we're the Youth Climate Ambassadors for Wales, and we have been given the opportunity to kind of express ourselves without censorship, despite how sometimes governments don't like that, even though, you know, all of that stuff. But we've kind of had the opportunity to do that, and we think it's important to give people in the global south and give people who sometimes are more censored or looked under with more scrutiny also the opportunity to genuinely and authentically share their experiences so we can act.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Yeah, and the final thing we spoke about is the fact that obviously we've had an amazing opportunity to speak to government officials, to speak to people who have power, but we found it extremely challenging that we would, you know, have events like this, we would speak, and then we would finish the event and it would feel like they didn't actually listen, they weren't going to take anything from that event. So I think we haven't quite figured out how to achieve this. It's very difficult when you're not actually a part of decision making. Obviously, we in the UK, we're not even old enough to vote in elections yet. Obviously I am yet, but sorry. And we were just saying that it would be so much easier, so much nicer to make change if we actually felt like when we were speaking, they were actively listening and they were going to take these things and make actions from it. Because there is no point going to all these communities, making people come together, having everybody be so passionate about things, and for them to actually not form actions from it. So I think that's really important.
All right, thank you very much. And time's running out. I don't think we have time for other interventions, even though we would really like to. And I heard something that I liked a lot, which was the sentence, after this session. Well, after this session, I think we can all stay in touch and exchange contacts where, in case we already don't know each other, I think some of the groups actually grouped some people who didn't know each other before this event. And we are, I think, as a group organizing this event, extremely happy and proud to have devoted an entire side event to this kind of conversations, free conversations that we can have even inside the UKYCC and COP26. I would like to thank our friends and speakers again, starting from Serena Mashal from the United Kingdom Youth Climate Coalition on my right, Gawusu Kassim from Greener Impact International on my left, also for facilitating the session in the room. Hajar Khamlichi, she's still there with us online. I would like to thank her as well. She will come to the COP in the next few days, so in case you're staying for the second week, you'll have the chance to meet her. And Ayola Olufemi from Nigeria for the very, very, very in-depth analysis of what is happening in terms of youth participation and the experience and the story and how can I say, proactiveness in terms of policies to come of our friend Carla Meleno from Youth in Landscape Initiative. Thank you again. Once again, I would like this session to continue forever. We cannot, but we can network, we can group as young people, and we can put our organizations in a network in a way that we can actually influence this process in the next 10 days. These kind of groupings already exist. There's a constituency called Yango. Many of you are part of that. We are, as Italian Climate Network, the national focal points for Italy in Yango, and it's just one of the many ways we can actually change history here at COP26 and in the next few months. I have 20 seconds, so I would use this time just to say thank you very much and ask you for a warm round of applause for our speakers. Thank you, guys.